What's going on, everybody? Mario Strikers Battle League comes out in just a couple of days, so I wanted to make a tier list based on my demo experience on how I feel about all of the characters. Before I get started on the tier list, a couple things you should know before I start ranking. I rank the tier list based on S tier, A tier, and B tier. This is because I don't necessarily think that any character is bad. You're not going to lose any games because you choose a certain character over another. However, the B tier is just full of characters that do a role not as well as another character. The first character I'm going to be ranking is Mario, which for the first time in sports games history, Mario is one of the best players in the game. And this is for a couple of reasons. It's mostly because of his shooting and technique stat, which are almost maxed out at 14 and 16 respectively. But on top of that, he doesn't sacrifice his ability to shoot with other stats. So for example, his strength is pretty average and his speed is also good enough to get around the field pretty quickly. So Mario is just a fantastic character, and I'm probably going to be picking him on all of my teams. Next, let's talk about the brother Luigi, who is a very good character, but unfortunately just isn't as good as Mario. Luigi took Mario's stats and they took it away from speed and shooting and decided to put it into passing, which is the worst stat in the game. I don't think that passing has any relevant changes to the metagame or has any effect whatsoever on the battlefield. So putting the points into passing is a complete waste, but he is still pretty fast. He has decent strength. He has very good technique, so he can make up for his lack of shooting with other stat items like the helmets and the gauntlets. So he's still a very good character, but just falling into A tier because he's not as good as Mario. Another character that just quite doesn't cut it is Bowser. I think that Bowser is going to also be in A tier. He has a very solid look on a lot of teams because he has a lot of strength and shooting, which means that he's able to score a lot of goals and also play defensively with a very strong body tackle and also being able to withstand the weaker characters tackling him, which is honestly an underrated ability to have in the game. So Bowser's shooting stat is very high. His technique is pretty low, but that can be brought up a little bit by some enhancing items. So I think that he's going to have a spot on a lot of teams. And as much as I hate to put this one, I think Peach is going to be put in B tier. The first character in B tier. Again, I don't necessarily think any B tier character is bad, but if you have 9 shooting, you are just not going to score goals as frequently as other characters. And the most important thing in this game is to get shots on goal. And the more likely those shots are to go in, the more likely you are to win the game. So having a low shooting stat is sort of a death sentence for a lot of these characters. Having high speed is pretty important, I will say. Having a speedy character to be able to get around the field is very nice. But I think in the higher levels of gameplay, your positioning is going to be a little bit better and it will be more important. So your speed isn't going to matter much when you are fighting one-on-one. As a contrary to Peach, Rosalina is also in the S tier just because of what I said earlier. Insane high shooting stat and also an insanely high technique stat and also a very high strength. I think that Rosalina is the perfect character for what I'm looking for in this game. Speed isn't super important when you have good positioning, and passing doesn't really make any difference whatsoever. So putting those to the minimum and putting it all into the stats that matter, like being able to withstand hits and also shooting for game. So Rosalina being the most important offensive character is also going to be on every team that I make. Next, we got to talk about Toad, and Toad, unfortunately, is going to join Peach in this tier because of the exact same reasons. Having speed is very nice, but there's just too many stats put into passing to the point where his shooting and technique are so incredibly low that he has almost no shot at making a goal, even if he's wide open. He can still score and he can still set up plays, but not having the stats where it matters is really going to hurt him in the long run. So I don't think there's any volatility. And speaking of speedy characters, Yoshi actually is not a speedy character, being the second slowest in the game for some reason, but he at least makes it into the A tier. Having 17 max shooting is pretty much always going to bring you into the A tier. Unfortunately, his technique is very low, and they also put a lot of points into passing. But if you want a character who is going to be able to get around the field and make plays, by passing and shooting and just being in front of the net, you are not going to be held back by Yoshi by any means. He is a very, very good character. Now we've got Donkey Kong, which is also going to be in the B tier. I really like Donkey Kong. I want him to be a good character. I want to have more muscle on the field for big hits and playing defense and stuff like that. But unfortunately, he has such low speed and low technique that he doesn't really fill a role on a team at all. So despite being a notoriously strong character, he doesn't have a very high shooting stat and his technique is incredibly low, meaning that he just is not going to score goals when you need him to. But someone who is able to score goals is Wario, also making it into the A tier, because Wario can definitely fit on a team as a bruiser and he has more scoring potential as DK. Like I said when I was talking about DK, he's just not as good as Wario, so Wario is going to fill the role that DK does, unless of course you want a full muscle team. Waluigi though, Waluigi is going to also be in the A tier, so leaving this with 2 characters that are in S tier, 5 characters in A tier, and 3 that are in B tier. Waluigi is a nice all-around character to have. He's not going to score goals, but he's by far the best defensive player you can have. That's why I said if you want to choose a speedy character, you might not want to go with these two and instead just go for Waluigi, because he's a much better defensive player with a higher strength stat. He's not going to score a lot of goals, but he is very important on the field because he can get around really quickly and make plays for the rest of the team. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of final rankings. This is going to be easy because there's only 10 characters. So first of all, we have Rosalina is the best character in the game, and then Mario. Here is the final rankings of A tier, leading with Bowser, of course. Next, I'm going to rank Yoshi because Yoshi also has an insanely high shooting stat, so he is going to score a lot of goals as well. Then there is Luigi. Then you have Waluigi, followed by Wario, because Wario just doesn't have the technique available to cut it. And lastly, the B tier rankings, we have Peach going first at the top of B tier. Then we have Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong just has way too many points in passing. I don't think Donkey Kong is meant to be a support character. He's meant to be a strong character. And finally, worst character, which is still usable, by the way, still a pretty good character, but the worst character so far is Toad. So anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments if this tier list is okay. I know that the game technically hasn't even come out yet, but this is just what I value based on my experience playing the demo. If you would like to see more comments similar to this video, then go ahead and click subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.